Welcome, everyone. This is being recorded. Welcome, everyone. This is Lessons from Researching Video Game Toilets. And how this came about was during the first day of the internship, Stephen was introducing himself, talking about things that he likes and doing some like icebreaker activities. And he did this knowledge bomb that he has this research site dedicated to toilets and video games. And of course, it was just like a record scratch, like, wait, what did you just say? And we had to have all these follow-up questions of, what does that mean? What have you found? And he gave like a very brief like overview of like how he approaches it and some consistencies that he's found, but just really love to go deeper. So I asked him if he'd be open to talking about his research with everyone. And of course he was more than happy to. So we're really excited to have this. I've been looking forward to this for like all summer. So I'll pass it over to Stephen.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for coming. Honestly, this is a dream to present my toilet research in front of a company where it could actually have an impact on the future of games as a whole. So I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. For the early career team, I'm really excited about giving this talk. It means a lot to me. So, and it's really exciting to give a talk in a place that actually wants to hear it. Usually it's more of a guerrilla effort where I just see a stage open at a convention center and then notice that no one has their laptop plugged in. So, but without further ado, lessons from researching video game toilets. And yes, I'm spelling video game as one word. I hope that catches on. Let's continue. So content warning, this talk is about toilets, the use of toilets and mild language, toilet language. But not like, too heavy curse words. It's just, just toilets. But toilets make anyone uncomfortable, just want to put that out there. So who am I? I know I got a little introduction, but my name is Stephen. I'm the Egerton character tech art intern at Activision Central Tech. Previously, I was at Alma Inc., House of Moves, GamerX, Serenity Forge, just a lot of indie stuff on our website. But I've been studying game design at USC. I'm a senior right now, and class 2021, I'm interested in mocap and technical level design, so that's sort of where a lot of my research goes. But honestly, I find toilets fascinating, or perhaps just the idea of toilets, so let me explain. All right, why toilets? Well, at USC Games, there is a class for the first year freshmen called CTI 190, Introduction to Interactive Entertainment. Our final was to write a 3,000-word game research paper. And it needed to be specific and also have something to at least make a professor laugh, because reading a lot of papers is hard. But my goal with this research paper was to answer one simple question, and that question is, why toilets? More specifically, why do people catalog them? Why are there entire Tumblrs, YouTube channels, and Twitter accounts devoted to screenshotting every game toilet in existence with metrics on if they're flushable or not, how long it takes to reach them from a game start, and so on? This is something that's been going on for years, and it goes deep. There's like a whole subculture surrounding it. And I was super curious why. I mean, I think that's the same reason why you were curious about this talk. Why do people write about them? Toilets are actually one of the most written about topics within games in general, if you didn't notice already. So I thought that's something also kind of to think about. And there's a lot of articles, seriously, a lot. And the great part is they're all on toiletgamestudies.org, my website. But what makes toilets so special, as opposed to boxes or vents, any other common staples within games? So I set off to write my paper, Why Toilets? So the procedures of how I went about doing this is I did a targeted survey on public interest of video game toilets. I began my journey distributed with one afternoon across numerous social platforms, hashtags, discussion boards, mostly targeted at game academics, developers, and gamers. Some journalists too. As you can see, I reached out to Jesper Ewell, a really well-known games academic. Did not hear back. In fact, I did not hear back from most of them. But I did get some pretty good data, mostly from as you can see, here's the demographics breakdown, but gamers, 67%, a lot of developers, mostly because that's who usually follows me or who is in my social circles. Game journalists, a few, and some are all of the above, which is actually quite interesting. And 12% were not gamers, but had familiarity with games enough to comment on toilets within games. So backseat gamers, if you will. So I did also a curated set of interviews that were personalized and tailored to the experiences of various toilet game experts who have been cataloging game toilets for years. I did about 4 or 5 of these, I believe. And those are a little bit more in-depth than the usual survey. So some of the questions look like this, like what got you interested in video games in the first place, toilets and video games. If they follow any social media or documentation, that was a good way of me finding more. And what is the special / unique thing about toilets to you? What role does toilets play in your life? What values, culturally, politically, do you think toilets present in games? Your favorite memory of toilets in games? That was a good one. What aspects of toilets in games do you think appeal to you personally, if any? And I think my favorite question, which I kind of just threw out there, but any interesting findings or discoveries you found with your time with toilets? And yeah, I mean, I think for the academics and the more people who were really immersed in the subculture of studying game toilets, their main appeal was it's like collecting postcards from different games when they visited a toilet, because toilets are everywhere. So that was sort of their hobby. But additionally, they liked the intricacies of toilets in terms of like horror or how much work went into them. And I'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, these people have been documenting toilets for 7 years now. It says 4 years because that's when I originally posted the paper. But yeah, but they've been still doing it to this day, so that's nice. Briefly, one of the academics actually moved to cataloging game watermelons, but that didn't last too long because toilets were just too interesting to pass up. So there were mistakes made. I want to put that out there. This being my first research assignment, I was late to include any form of informed consent document with my survey, and I learned from my mistake when I posted to the Game Studies Open Forum. And I was directed to this online article from the Journal of Canadian Game Studies Association on the research recruitment of the World of Warcraft forums. And they made some mistakes there, and so I was able to sort of vicariously learn, and I corrected myself quite quickly. So yeah, once I knew my mistake, I I proceeded to correct each post that I had put with an edit, explaining the specifics, the goals, the use of the information, and the anonymity of the study, as well as contact information for if anyone wanted to have the final study findings. So that's the end of procedures. So lesson 1, immersion. So as games had raced to achieve realism by means of visual fidelity, the introduction of toilets to video games had overlapped and dovetailed with the introduction of 3D graphics. Before, when there were just 2D games, there wasn't really many toilets. I mean, there still were there, but they weren't as prevalent or as noticed. But once like Duke Nukem came out, as well as like maybe Doom and other sort of 3D first-person shooters, you started to see a lot more toilets in games. So this is one of the survey responses. A toilet represents an entirely extraneous element in a video game. Flushable toilets even more so. Interacting with a toilet is typically completely systematically valueless, but feels right in the context, lending a feeling of authenticity without necessarily an increase in graphic fidelity. I believe toilets are the #1 tool for suspension of disbelief. You get the most bang for your buck if you want to make your game realistic or authentic by just putting a toilet in there. And that kind of goes hand in hand with Steve Gaynor's. Steve Gaynor actually worked on Gone Home as well as BioShock. And his point was that things being interactive for the sake of being interactive, that the world needs to be internally consistent. If there's something that your character might do, you should be able to do it in the game. And I think toilets are a big part of that. It really breaks immersion if you can't take a shit. And I think that's really, clear. So the role of the game designer, first and foremost, and this is something that my professor says a lot, Tracy Fullerton at USA Games, is to be an advocate for the player. And I think toilets help that. I mean, I think toilets empower the player to let them make their own decisions and judgment calls on whether or not something's meaningful to them. Like they may, obviously there's all these games that have these huge campaigns, multiple game modes, beautifully rendered open worlds, but yet what draws them the most and what they put a lot of attention to is toilets. So I think giving them little, Easter eggs is something that we should be more considerate about, even if it's not something that the entire player base will latch onto or even notice. The ones who do, it's really special for them. So from a loser's attitude standpoint, over a fourth of the recorded responses to the toilet rating justification short answer mentioned that the attention to detail that toilets have that makes the world feel more whole, makes the games feel alive, lets you know they care. They being us, the developers, listening to our player base, and exist in video games as a requirement for their plausibility as real spaces. Toilets offer intuitive interactions that links the player's understanding of the real world to the game world by means of associations. Some of the most systematically rich game design is found in immersive sims. And while those games share common ancestral origins from Looking Glass Studios and the people who split apart from it, they also share interactive toilets. And toilets demonstrate just how much agency we have as players, just because, they put the time and effort to put a toilet in there, let alone it be interactive. So affordances. There's a concept called affordances. It's sort of like what you can do with a thing, the many uses of a thing. And like obviously you can wear a hat, but you can also use a hat to hold things, like, panhandle for money, that sort of thing. There's a lot of different affordances for different things. Obviously toilets have a lot of affordances, a lot of considerations, that we have to make when adding toilets to our games. I mean, just look at that. These are all the questions that a designer has to think about when they, think, hey, we should add toilets to our games. So yeah, it's definitely something. So the more novel affordances you have with the thing, the more use you can get out of it, the more fun it is to use. And my goodness, I think toilets are some of the most affordance-rich objects in games. So why can't we do that with other objects? Lesson 2, expectation. So I think interesting things come from subverting the player's expectations. Toilets are there to take our wastes. It is always interesting to see what they'll do in a game. I suppose we might even want to see if the games will stoop so low as to make their characters use them for its sole purpose. This is from Toby Saunders, a freelance writer who chose to write about toilets. I think he was actually paid to write about toilets, so someone obviously was interested to hear his opinions and thoughts. So what do all these toilets have in common? I'll just look for the chat. Anyone have any? Eh? Okay, well, I'll move forward. They break expectation, provide interesting affordances, and can be places for risks and reward. From jump scares, loots, and Easter eggs. Toilets embody possibility space. Obviously, this is Borderlands. It could be a bomb waiting for you. It could be, ammo, a new weapon. You never know what's going to be behind that porta potty door. Same goes for, I think one really interesting thing about it is like, this is Fallout right here. And Fallout, you can use the toilet to drink from, and it's sort of a risk reward. Like, do I need the health points right now? But at the end, also, I might give myself radiation poisoning. So it's sort of a risk and reward sort of give and take relationship. It's a dilemma, and I think these self-contained dilemmas and scatological humor that players enjoy are quite universal. I think it's no wonder that toilet humor is so prevalent in a medium where the punchline is player-driven. If you give them a challenging choice, like, do I have enough ammo to deal with the zombie behind this, stall door, or but then again, there might be like some ammo or something. And I think that was something that I experienced playing the new Last of Us. So, yeah, plenty of body humor, but people enjoy it. So toilets and horror, I think toilets represent the isolation and the grotesque. The uncanny valley is a concept. It's something that's so mundane, but off that it makes us sick. Because we have such a common idea of what a bathroom should appear like. But when it's off, when it's different, we take notice subconsciously, and it makes us feel sick inside. It gives us, these weird kind of feelings, right? And so I think that's a really powerful thing. I find that toilets areas and levels also tend to be the more dense part of the level, and one of the survey takers agrees with me. When you walk into a public bathroom, it's sort of well known that devs like to hide loot in public and toilet stalls, or even jump scares. I think bathrooms are like a loot box experience, opening one stall at a time, which I think, as someone who, cares a lot about how we monetize games fairly, I think that's a really insightful, outlook. We don't have to just have a loot box experience be the same old, this is a box with a really nice satisfying animation. There's like audio that cues like that are subconscious and very, minimalistic, like coins falling down with like little like, sweeteners. Instead, it could be, a toilet. And players would vibe a little bit more with that. So just putting that out there. But yeah, again, lesson 3, inclusivity. So when I put out the question, what values culturally, politically do you think toilets present in games, I was met with a lot of resistance and a lot of disbelief that toilets can have embedded values within them, that games can be political. And I think a lot of them proceeded to fill up the survey as a joke from then on out. But those that did answer correctly and seriously, not even correctly, but just answered thoughtfully, really opened my eyes. So this is one of them. One of the survey takers said, "I am trans. Playing video games and finding the gendered space available to me was baffling and fascinating, partly because the place was built the way it was, connected. It allowed, but also that there was never an intention or threat that accompanied me into real-life bathrooms. Post-apocalyptic or destroyed world settings will often join the bathrooms via collapsed walls, ungendering the spaces, providing the protagonist with permission to enter both or either." I think toilets are a really important thing in games, especially for vicariously exploring things like gender in a very safe, risk-free environment. So more on that. But another one of the survey takers said, thinking of Fallout 4, which I played a lot of, every time I found gendered public toilets, they were in a pair and connected this way. Why? Is it because some squeamishness that causes the developers to do this? Problems with small dead-end rooms? Which I will talk about later in terms of levels design. But additionally, another separate survey taker said, every toilet is a dead end to map, and devs usually don't have dead ends with no purpose. So to avoid a pointless area, every dev will put something in the bathroom, and then further on, connect them. And so that one just answered the other survey's question. But yeah, again, I think toilets are a really interesting space for exploring gender. From a level design standpoint, I think, the reason why designers sort of connect, bathrooms in a sort of, like, broken wall type of way is they want to avoid orphan spaces, which I'm sort of making up from orphan verbs. Orphan verbs is a concept from Anthropy and Naomi Clark from the game design vocabulary. It's verbs as actions in a game, like shoot, pick up, eat. They have no relationship to the other verbs. So the other verbs don't reinforce it. It doesn't grow, and the player has forgot about it by the time that she has, reaches one of the situations that demand it. I think that's really important. Like let's say you have a game where you have to run at one point, but you only have to run at that specific point. Players will forget that the shift key is there to run if you don't have them, consistently reinforce that, habit or that, tool in their, vocabulary of verbs. So I think before I go out further, I think by connecting toilets and populating them, we're developing them further as a writer would when creating a multi-dimensional character with an arc. Often games with normal settings featuring public toilets will restrict you from entering the wrong one, such as The Sims. This is a screenshot from DSX, and in that game, if you go into the wrong bathroom, you get called out on it. And the same happens for a lot of games, like Max in Life is Strange. She'll go comment on how disgusting the boys' toilets are, or in Persona 4, you're prevented from going to the girls' toilets in school because you're not allowed to enter. I think toilets in games are inherently political spaces that inform the player about the game world systems. From racial segregation to trans rights, toilets are environmental storytellers' best friends. Games, almost always depict public bathrooms as gendered and rarely acknowledge trans people, let alone non-binary ones. There's also a notable omission of accessible bathrooms, similarly to correlating with the relative absence of disabled characters in games. I thought this was really insightful, is the fact that like the way our toilets look, whether they have handles near them or if they're large, or if does that sort of implies that there's no disabled characters in the game's world, because there's no I guess accessible toilets, and I think that's really interesting. I mean, again, there's so many different types of toilets, even culturally speaking, from around the world, from the Romans, medieval, Victorian, progressive, modern day amenities, and the future. Toilets are just as diverse as the people using them, and it really concerns me that all the toilets look the same in games, that we kind of just copy and paste the same templated basic toilet design throughout all of them, without a consideration of where in the world we are at, whether it would be these squat toilets or these more modern ones, how like electronics, or like they don't really consider that. So I think that's something that we can kind of do better on. But I took my computer to make it interactive with a toilet in the hopes of finding out why all the toilets look the same. So don't mind the Jar Jar Binks dating sim. But again, the toilets, can anyone tell me in chat what's wrong with this clip? Okay, I'm hearing no soap. You are right on that end. Did not raise the seat. Yes, that's kind of rude, perhaps, for some people. Okay, here we are. Yes. You're getting it. So I think I had designed this toilet with my own biases as a cis male, and by doing that, I had made this experience perhaps a bit sexist, maybe a bit even ableist. Like this, you can't use the toilet without standing up. So I did what any responsible developer would do and should do, and I wrote a sincere apology to my player base with a roadmap of how I would and could do better. So obviously, like I mentioned, future installments of my games that include toilets would have be more diverse along gender and lines, and even be more interactive. So it's important to think about your own biases when designing something. So as designers, if one is creating a world to be believable, yet it excludes a player of people from that world, whether we intend to or not, it's a message to them that group of people that space was not designed with them in mind, and that they were not welcome there or considered in the making of that game. And yes, it's virtual toilets, and only a small minority of gamers consciously pick up or even care about such tiny details. But I think it's bigger than toilets. It's about representation in games and accessibility. It's about validating our players, right? Like we shouldn't subconsciously alienate our player base. It's just bad business practice. So my point is, we should be aware of our game's embedded values. I mean, I've only been here for a few weeks, but it seems to me the $1 million question with our franchises is like, how do we get more people playing them and the community is less toxic? And I mean, I think the easiest answer to this is if the game is wholesome in its values, the community will start there and likely not venture far off from that through line of the design. However, if a game is more divisive in nature, hardcore or edgy, you kind of draw in those crowds. And I think, it's just really important to consider the starting point in developing your community, because it's near impossible to shift gears later. I think that kind of is important for, whether you're indie or whether you're AAA. Community management begins with the game itself and the content, and how people perceive the content. So if you're going to exclude a group of players, make sure it's an intentional design choice and not a mistake. Because if you're going to have time to make an interactable toilet, you definitely have time to make your players feel welcomed. Just think about your total addressable market, everyone who can buy your game, right? It may be something as small as a cosmetic item description or a toilet, but if employed thoughtfully, it could be a selling point, and generate news, or it could be a controversy. So again, one of the first things I was told at the orientation was that we are a player-centric company. Our games may have target demographics, but at the end of the day, everyone plays them. From the Prime Minister of Norway, Erna Solberg, to the teenage boy on the other side of the world who says he's had relationships with my mother.
Okay. Oh! Oh my God! Oh! Oh my!
So, again, everyone plays our games. And also, everyone goes to the bathroom. Makes you think. Makes you think. All right, lesson 3. This is actually the wrap up now. Toilets are good game design. If a game has an interactive toilet in it, odds are it's a pretty good game. The designers really, went out there, made everything interactive, because if there's a toilet that's interactable, it's probably consistently everything else is interactive in some shape or fashion too, which is exciting. I think people like very systematically driven games in terms of, it's spontaneous, it doesn't feel on rails, set pieces feel genuine, and very much, player owned. That's why I think a lot of people like the soccer series or different immersive sims. So, but again, I think as for journalists who choose to cover very specific aspects of games, I think the reason why people are really interested in toilets and games is because, like, if they notice a little thing, like let's say in like Half-Life or Zelda or whatever, and they inflate its importance because they felt good about noticing it. But also they want people to feel bad, or not necessarily feel bad, but like they want people to think that they are a little bit more caring about games, or a little bit more articulate about games because they notice that little thing. So that's sort of why I think it draws, journalists, because it kind of makes them look good. And again, like other common staples in games, toilets serve many of the same purposes. They're hiding places, they contain goodies. They're fun because they play with expectations. They tend to lead you to hidden places. They give you shortcuts, show you attention to detail. And they're special because we make them special. So last point is, I think everything has inherent values, whether we think it's neutral and ubiquitous. Semiotics are extremely important. How a toilet looks is just as important as the toilet itself. Toilets mean different things to different people, and the same goes for everything else you can literally put in a game. And representation matters a lot. And we have the ability to look beyond our own experiences, our own biases, and make something that, fun, that brings all people together, gives people a respite, while at the same time making them braver to confront the real world after the credits roll. If players spend 2,000 years a day just playing one of our games, imagine how we can crowdsource a better world. It's a lot of hours, a lot of days. So my last thing is, toilets are a focal point in the artistic exchange and dialogue between player and developer. So a while ago, I interviewed Marcus Houghton, an artist on the Battlefield franchise, and one of his favorite memories of the game was an Easter egg that referenced a fan favorite anime series called Battlefield Friends. And I think this little nod to the fans is really, I think it's really, it's really endearing. It's both parties, developers and players, being really happy with each other and showing appreciation and respect. And I muted this because I want to talk to you all, but whenever you hit it, there's a new soundbite from the show, and it's very funny. But I thought it was really, really endearing. And these are developers communicating directly with the fan base, just through a toilet. And this video got millions upon millions of views. So this was a huge advertising thing for a bit. But I think that's really, we can do more of that outreach. And believe that's about it for that slide. Okay. And toilets bring people together. The end. It's no wonder why Marcel Duchamp considers toilets high art. This is the Dadaist piece, Fountain, that really changed the art world. So if toilets can change the art world, I think they could change games if they haven't already. So thank you so much for listening. To read the entire essay or of other articles I've written about toilets, view the raw data survey data, which is actually a goldmine, and interview transcripts, submit an article. Please visit toiletgamestudies.org. Additionally, you can, if you want to do an interview, if you've done art or scripting on a toilet, feel free to contact me at contact@toiletgamestudies.org. Thank you so much. Is there any time for questions or any questions? And I guess I can get my normal camera on. All right, any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself if you can. Otherwise, if Aaron or any of the other crew team wants to shout out one of the questions that they saw. I wasn't able to look too closely at the chat.
May just asked, what's your favorite toilet?
Ooh, okay. So I think the game was called Daylight. It's a zombie game. And there's this one part in the campaign where there's I think it's random, but there was a few zombies, maybe 3 or something, and in one single stall. But they were if you looked underneath the stall, there was no feet. But when you open the door, they would spawn. So that was a very intentional jump scare that the developer put there. And that and in that game, the zombies are a little bit more, I guess scary than most. So I really enjoyed that moment. Is there another question? Or I see one.
Yeah, so Max is asking, did you find the depiction of toilets and other forms of media differ much from how they are implemented in video games? For example, the South Park episode where they realize they have no idea how to use toilets.
I think, South Park obviously has a lot of toilet references. I could think of 5 episodes right now off the cuff that have toilets in them. Even the games, the South Park, the Stick of Truth, I know that has a very interactive toilet. In fact, that game has a button dedicated to just farting. So I think that's where they stand. But in regards to other media, a lot of films actually didn't include toilets for the longest of time. It wasn't until I think I'm trying to think of what the horror film was, but it's the very famous one with the girl in the shower and the knife. Psycho. I think it was until Psycho that you actually got to see a toilet on screen. So, and even until today, you don't really see the bathroom as a place where people film. Mostly because there's not really good lighting. You can't really have a bunch of camera equipment in there, or it's kind of a hard place to shoot. You might have a bathroom mirror, but you're not likely going to have a toilet. I think the only other movie maybe is Bridesmaid. I think they they pooped inside of a sink once. I'm not really sure. There's not many movies that have toilets in them.
How can people contribute to your toilet research?
So again, this actual website itself domain costs me about, I think, $12 I'm going to say a year, I think, or probably a year to host. And so if you want to donate $12 and give me a year of toilet stuff, then by all means, that would be nice. But mostly just if you want to contribute, if you have any fun ideas or things that you think I should look into, or if you notice any articles that I don't have on the website itself, I could put it on the hub. Or if you want to have an interview about your experiences with toilets and games, or eventually I'm just trying to get as much data on toilets as possible, because eventually I hope to make this an actual book. Maybe it's a bathroom book that you can read, or one of those sort of Urban Outfitters type, coffee table type things.
Right. Do you find that in your research, was there any rating issues or parental concerns with toilets, like toilet humor?
Not really. In fact, actually, I gave this talk, a similar version of this talk to Mindfair LA. It's this Minecraft convention, and the average age of attendees is around, I'd say like 5 to like 8, maybe 13 at max. So generally, like the kids really vibed with toilets and games. They were really excited about it, and the parents were really interested about it too. Whenever I do this talk, like in a sort of guerrilla format where I'm not supposed to be giving the talk, it does better than the talks that were actually on those stages, that were like slated and had like a time slot and were on people's programs, in terms of drawing crowds. So I think kids really enjoy toilets as much as adults do, from the scatological humor point. I mean, obviously, like, poop jokes are like huge amongst kids. Who doesn't like a good poop joke? All right.
Has there been any games that have exceeded expectations along the lines of gender equality and accessibility within toilets?
So can you repeat the question? Sorry, I think I heard a little noise that kind of.
Yes. Is there any game that comes to mind that exceeded your expectations along the lines of gender and accessibility for toilets?
Yeah, I mean, I think Robert Yang's work is probably my favorite when it comes to toilets. There's a game called, I don't know if it was Tea House or, I'll have to remember what it was called, but it was about like, it's a gay cruising game. So it's about like, trying to, like code switch / figure out if the person's interested in you / whether or not, they're undercover cop that wants to like kill you. For being gay. I think it's a very scary sort of horror / puzzle game. There's a lot of RNG in it, but it's, Tea House. Yeah, and that was a very, I think, great game in terms of just like a commentary on a lot of things, from guns to censorship on Twitch. It was a fantastic game. I recommend you looking up Robert Yang's work.
Is there a game that lacks toilets that could really benefit from having toilets in it?
Any game that lacks toilets can benefit from having toilets in them. I think that's probably my answer to that. But yeah, you know what? I think Max is right. I think Kirby could probably be the most beneficial game for toilets, because like Kirby eats so much. Where does it go? It goes into a void. Anyways. But if that's it, does that dressing toilets have the same impact as interactable toilets? I think interactable toilets are really special for people. I think, obviously if the toilet's there, it's cool, but once it becomes interactive, it really like informs the player. It makes the player notice it. Like if their cursor is like hovering over it and it gives them like the hovering version of the cursor or whatever, or highlights or something, they're like, whoa, if that's interactable, what else is? And so that really opens their mind to like, the rest of the game. But if it's just a set dressing toilet, it blends in. I mean, obviously they're like, oh, someone made this. Like it's dead end. I don't see anything, but like someone had to make this, even though like there's nothing here, someone had to make it. So, I mean, I think regardless, toilets sort of put that thought into someone's mind, and when they're playing a game is someone had to make this. And I think that's important, because I think gamers view developers as like this black box, right? Like, and I think that's where a lot of the like expectations, unfair expectations, or like a lot of the demanding, like toxic behavior comes out, where they threaten developers because they don't realize how difficult it is to make a game. And so they sort of unfairly judge based off of that. So once you put a toilet in there, they actually think about it more consciously. So I think it's good for relations. Anything else in regards to toilets or game design, or I don't know. Where does Donkey Kong pee? I don't know. I can't. The jungle. The jungle is his toilet. Oh, so where can we follow you? So I guess on Twitter at Stephen J. Harmon 1. Otherwise, my website is Stephen Harmon Games, but you can just look that up on Google and probably find me. I can type in the chat if you'd like. All right. So that has all the things. Any other questions about anything? I'm just super happy to have you all here. This is great. Thank you so much. This went a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. Last time I did it, it took like 25 minutes. So that's
this was
cool.
perfect. Can people reach out to you on Slack too? If
Yeah.
questions come up
I mean,
later?
obviously, I'm only here for another 3 more weeks, pretty much, because I'm an intern. But hopefully, I'll be able to come back after college, after I graduate. But for the next 3 weeks, you can find me on Slack. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thank you so much, Aaron, for putting this together. And thank you, everyone, for